This Texas football team that Georgia is going to deal with in Sanford Stadium on Saturday night is the most inconsistent team I have studied all year long. Just watching the games and then going back and looking at the numbers throughout the year, it has been this a roller coaster ride of performances all season long for Arch Manning and this Texas football team. It makes it difficult for me to have a concrete opinion on who the Texas Longhorns are right now. I will say, you'll see it in our picks. I like Georgia in this game. I think that Georgia's just better, and it being a home night game obviously favors the Bulldogs in more ways than one. But let's talk about Texas and what I think Texas would need to do if it is going to go into Athens and either make it a really difficult game for Georgia to win or to upset the Dogs on their home turf. Ryan Kelly from Dawg Post talking about the Dogs and the Horns. And look, I think the Horns are all over the place. It's difficult to really get a read on them. Only one conference loss coming to the Florida Gators. The other loss was obviously that week 1 game against Ohio State. And I don't even really want to spend much time talking about that game. Look, Ohio State's a better football team than them. That was a week 1 game in August. We're in November now. It's 40-something degrees in Athens. We are far removed from that, and week 1 is not a great indicator of who teams are. And then Texas dealt with San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston. Blew those teams out. Kind of struggled against UTEP before it got into conference play. It lost its first SEC game of the season in Gainesville. Not Jacksonville, in Gainesville, to the Florida Gators. Then you thought, is this Texas team just bad? Right? Because we don't think Florida's a very good team. And for the most part, Florida hasn't been a very good team this season. They followed up with, you could say, it's a strong win against Oklahoma. It's another kind of borderline playoff team at the moment. Beat them by 17 points in the Red River rivalry. Then a couple of overtime games against teams that all of us kind of view as 2 of the worst 4 in the conference, in Kentucky, Mississippi State. Then they get a win over a top 10 Vanderbilt at home. But let's talk about what actually happened in some of these games, and it just kind of proves my point a little bit here. Texas is all over the place. Georgia's been a little bit more consistent. What Georgia has done is run the football, and now it's getting a little bit more explosive, right? So Georgia's kind of trending up at the right time. Explosive game against Ole Miss, explosive game against Mississippi State. Not very explosive against Florida, although it ended by winning with explosive plays. Diving into Texas, we'll go in order of how they happened. Against Florida, they couldn't run on the Gators. 52 yards. And Florida got up to a 10-0 lead in the first quarter. And then you said, okay, how is this going to go? Texas will abandon the run when it's down. You see that against Mississippi State. You kind of have to in some cases. But this is not a Texas football team that has run the ball consistently. Has about 500 fewer rushing yards than Georgia this season. So that is, I'd say, pretty significant when you consider that they've played 9 games each. All right, so I'd say that's a pretty significant number. Lagway had one of his better games against this Longhorns defense. 21 for 28, 298 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jaden Baugh ran for over 100 yards, and Texas could never just get back into it. Heading into the fourth quarter, the Longhorns were down 29-14. Right, so playing from behind, Arch Manning throws a couple of interceptions, and you say, wow, that is a rough way for the Longhorns to kick off their SEC season. This Florida team is better than people think. Probably a little better than the record shows, but it's a team that doesn't score very much, and I think 29 points is the most it's scored on a Power 4 opponent this season. That came against the Texas Longhorns. So that's something to note. Then it follows it up with a game against John Mateer, a quarterback that was very much hyped up in the month of September. Coming back from an injury, Mateer throws 3 interceptions. Texas wins with defense, shut Oklahoma down to 48 rushing yards. Oklahoma could not function on offense, did not score in the second half, did not score a touchdown the entire game. Texas scores 1 touchdown the entire game and had a punt return touchdown. We'll talk again about Ryan Niblett and the special teams of this Longhorn attack. I was going to say Longhorn attack. Just the Texas special teams, particularly Ryan Niblett with the punt returns. He's got 2 of them this season against SEC programs. Arch Manning kind of does what he needs to do in that game. It's rather vanilla. Texas runs the ball with a lead in the second half. They get that lead in the third quarter and then hold on to it in the fourth quarter. Oklahoma, bad offense. Texas, good defense, right? So it follows up kind of a not great defensive performance with a pretty good one against Oklahoma and shutting John Mateer down, forcing him to have his worst game of the season. Then Texas goes up to Kentucky. Night game in Lexington. We know that can be difficult. We saw Georgia struggle with that in 2024. But every game is independent of another. Well, Texas goes up there and can't move the ball. 179 yards of total offense for Texas. It was a field goal fest, and they win with a field goal in overtime against a Kentucky Wildcat team that Georgia ran all over and easily got to the 35-point mark, took its foot off the gas pedal. They got outrushed, and they got outpassed by the Kentucky Wildcats and found a way to win that game somehow. This is a Texas team that's all over the place. Most recent game for the Longhorns, a home game against then number 9 Vanderbilt, a team coming off of its college game day hype and a close win against Missouri. Texas gets out to a 17-0 lead. They kind of boat race them there at the beginning. Arch Manning's having one of his better games. He throws for 3 scores. Diego Pavia and this offense can't run the ball. So Texas' rushing defense, which, by the way, is number 1 in the conference right now, only allowing 78 yards per game on the ground. They did what I believe I wrote this. When Vanderbilt goes against good rushing defense, it really struggles. We saw them struggle to beat Auburn in overtime this past week. Clark Lee completely mismanaged the end of that game, and they almost lost. But what happens is, in this Vanderbilt-Texas game, which I've kind of gone on a tangent off on, we're back to it. Diego Pavia lights them up in the fourth quarter. They come back and make it a 3-point game after Texas was up 34-10 heading into the fourth quarter. They almost squandered that away. Pavia has 215 yards. He has, I believe, all 3 of his, if not, then 2 of his touchdowns in that fourth quarter. Texas let the passing offense for Vanderbilt explode all over them in the fourth quarter. So, what do we make of this Texas football team that kind of didn't play as well as you'd think against the non-Power 4 opponents that went up to Ohio State and lost a defensive battle, that won a defensive battle against Oklahoma, and then somehow I scraped out. It was a weird watch when you go back and watch that Kentucky-Texas game. Who are the Texas Longhorns? I haven't decided what I'm going to exactly title this video quite yet, but I might title it, Who Are the Texas Longhorns? Because every single game, there has been a very different result for Texas. And I don't think you can say the same thing about Georgia. Georgia's played some tight games, but Georgia's identity has been to run the football and to use Gunnar Stockton's legs in the red zone and to use its playmakers on the outside. You're not getting that out of Texas. And I failed to mention the Mississippi State game. They had to come back and they scored 31 points between the fourth quarter and overtime compared to Mississippi State's 7. Ryan Niblett's punt return touchdown kind of saved them in that game. And you think, oh man, Mississippi State has just given this game away to Texas. But you get a tough road win at night in the SEC. I believe that was a night game. You get a tough road game, maybe an afternoon game. You get my point. Texas's results have been all over the place. So what do they need to do to be good against Georgia? They need to run the football. And they need to help control the clock. Because what we have seen is Arch Manning is not consistently winning these games for Texas with his arm. And in fact, there's been games where he hasn't been good with his arm. Will he be able to do that in a hostile environment, the most hostile environment they're going to face all season? I know they went to Columbus, but that's a week 1 noon game. This is a night game in Sanford Stadium with another team that has legitimate playoff chances in the Georgia Bulldogs. If they don't run the football well, it's going to be tough sledding. If they don't stop the run, forget about it. This Georgia team will destroy Texas if that's the case. If Georgia runs all over Texas, I don't see this being a close game. I've said that a couple times. Georgia ran really well against Alabama and lost a close game, but that's because Georgia's defense could not shut down Ty Simpson in the early goings of the game. I don't suspect Georgia will have that problem with Texas this week, but like I said, it's hard to predict who the Texas Longhorns are because they've been different every single game. I just thought I'd share, for those who haven't been paying too close attention to Texas this season, most inconsistent team I've studied all year long. Thank you for watching this video. I found myself dumbfounded going through this because what do you make of a team like that? All right, it's a team that's do or die, right? If you lose another game for your Texas, you're out of this thing. So they will be playing with that type of fire. I still think Georgia's going to be too much for the Longhorns. So thank you for watching. We'll see you on Riding Home. We'll see picks we'll see in all sorts of ways over the next few days. Keep up with us on our channels and here as well.